Hello, friends. Very often we hear such exclamations, the horror. The horror. There will be inflation. All our money will burn up. It will melt like snow in the spring. Therefore, we need to urgently buy something to save our savings. We only live in this world once. But, friends, I dare to note that money usually does not melt like that. Usually, it melts just at the moment when you make numerous purchases, for example, on marketplace websites, in stores, in salons. You go to the store, and the money magically melts away. Indeed, it cannot be said that the original statement was false, because inflation really does slowly devalue money savings. And inflation itself, moderate inflation, is rather a benefit for the economy. It develops economic processes, because it signals to a person, don't save money, spend it today. The mechanism of the market economy is launched. Money is just an intermediate link, a universal means of exchange. For example, you worked hard, produced a product or service, earned money, and then simply exchange it for someone else's labor or for someone else's work, exchange it for a product produced by someone else. In a global sense, inflation growth is needed so that you make an exchange faster, without delay. They gave you some conventional candy wrappers, beads or shells, go quickly, exchange them for any other goods. And when you start to cheat and hack this system, accumulating more of these shells, then the global economy, of course, does not welcome this. That is why, in order to punish those who accumulate, inflation can accelerate, a kind of tax on such people. Or shells can suddenly be replaced with glass balls or pebbles. For example, the era of the British pound has given way to the era of the American dollar. The task of a smart person is not to accumulate as many shells as possible, but to acquire some values, useful assets with them. What is the difference between assets and liabilities? I hope you understand this, there is no need to explain. Globally, there are only two asset classes that allow you to beat inflation over long periods of time. These are company shares and income-generating real estate. By the way, 70 to 80% of capitalists in the world keep their capital in real estate, so it is stupid to argue with this. Life itself has already answered the question of what is better for them. Buying shares is buying a part of a real business that is capable of generating income in the form of dividends and growth in the price of the share itself. That is, the shares themselves usually grow over time, and they often bring a small additional delta in the form of profit distributed among the owners of the shares. And the second type is income-generating real estate, residential or commercial. The essence is the same, you parked your money, your shells, which were given to you as an equivalent of invested labor, in concrete, in bricks. These bricks in the form of an apartment or office are then rented out and bring you a stable monthly income. You cannot confuse the amount of this income, for example, with the nominal income on bonds or deposits. In the case of all debt instruments, your capital is parked not in concrete, not in bricks or a share of the enterprise, but in wrappers, that is, in printed fiat currencies, in those very conditional shells, beads. And people often make a cognitive error, they say, why should I invest in shares or real estate if I can put it on deposit and receive a return 3 times more? You confuse real profitability, plus an asset protected from inflation, with nominal profitability. And you compare the incomparable. Yes, there are moments, usually short-term, when the profitability on deposits exceeds inflation. But this happens very rarely and the bank will not remain a loser in the long run anyway. It will not be able to give too much above inflation and there will definitely come a period when inflation will safely eat up your accrued interest. It is only a matter of time. There are no miracles, there is also money out of thin air, this is a myth. You can't compare nominal yield with dividend or income from renting out real estate. This is a fundamental mistake of ordinary investors, a cognitive error of consciousness, if you like. All other types of investments, precious metals, options, debt instruments, etc., lose to these two methods I listed above, real estate and shares. Of course, there are always risks, but globally only these two types of assets work in the plus. Everything else is either more risky, or with long-term use, at best, will be able to recoup only inflation, that is, your capital will be marking time. A piece of metal will remain a piece of metal, it will not provide any additional income, but will only require storage costs and a loss from the spread between purchase and sale. Unlike a business, an asset that brings real profit. To put it simply, it is better to think about buying chickens that regularly and constantly lay eggs for you, and not about buying IOUs denominated in printed fiat currencies. It is important that the chicken is ideally immortal, lives a long time, and is valuable in itself, does not lose its value over time. The same logic in assessing assets should be applied to loans. People often ask this question. If we expect high inflation, then it is profitable to take out a lot of loans so that our borrowed money also depreciates. Yes, in theory and purely mathematically this is so. But one very important point is missed, the key one. What exactly are you taking this loan for? For what product? If it is a consumer product that loses its value after purchase, that's one story. If it is a long-term asset, that's a completely different story. From a mathematical point of view, living with debt may be profitable, especially during a period of high inflation. If the interest rate on the loan is lower than the actual inflation or at least equal to it, then this seems to be not bad. But from a psychological point of view, no. The type of product or service for which this loan is taken is important. If a loan is taken for development, for education, which in the future will allow you to get a good profession and earn more, then this is good. If a loan is taken for a real estate object, for a real asset, which in the future will bring you a cash flow, and at the same time over the years it, like a good wine, will only become more expensive, absorbing inflation, then this is the right decision, this is the right loan. Inflation is always transferred to the cost of the object. But people, realizing their weakness and desire to consume here and now, often try to justify consumer loans in this way. They say that taking consumer loans is profitable. Even if the rate is lower than inflation by a fraction of a percent, you still eat up your future, you buy not an asset, but a liability. It's like buying an expensive product, tempted by a small discount, it seems profitable, but in fact you have overpaid for the very fact of the purchase. You can in no way justify the profitability of buying a conditional smartphone or refrigerator on credit. Simply because as soon as you bought it, its value on the market immediately decreased. A new car immediately loses about 1/3 of its value after leaving the showroom, and with each day of use it loses even more. All the goods we consume are better assessed not as objects, but as periods of use, as time periods of using a service. For example, when you buy a car, a washing machine or a refrigerator, you are not buying the object itself, but you are buying a function, a service, the ability to use it, wash, drive, store food. And it is important to learn to ask yourself the question, for how long am I buying this service for? Because it will no longer be possible to resell it profitably or even get your money back. Buying a new wedding dress for a bride can cost several $1,000s or even tens of thousands of dollars in a bridal salon, but as soon as the wedding is over, you have this dress on the secondary market and you will not be able to sell it to anyone for $10, although only one day has passed, but 99% of the cost of the goods has disappeared. You buy the time of use, and not the thing itself. This is why many people prefer to rent a wedding dress or any disposable items, rather than buy them. A used product, over the years of use, only loses in value. That's it, you have already consumed it. And therefore it is difficult to justify the profitability of a loan for such a product using only mathematics. Any consumer loan, taken not for business, but specifically for consumption, is always a loss, despite even the formal profitability from a mathematical point of view. But in general, the interest rate on consumer loans is usually much higher than, for example, on mortgage loans. The bank also assesses its risk and includes this risk. In fact, in the case of a mortgage, the bank takes virtually no risk at all when issuing money secured by real estate, so the rates on such loans may be slightly lower. Don't think that you are the smartest and that you manage to outwit the financial system, the bank, which employs dozens and hundreds of the smartest people with an economic education. As soon as you start to think that you are the smartest, this is a reason to stop and check everything again. If it turns out mathematically that a loan is beneficial to you, then why don't a crowd of financiers, the bankers themselves, take out a loan? Why doesn't everyone around take out loans? It's as beneficial as you think. Don't forget that you are not the smartest person at this table. If loans and installments are advertised to you everywhere, then most likely it is not as beneficial as it seems. Has everyone suddenly become fools? Don't they themselves know that it is beneficial to buy a new smartphone or TV on credit? But for some reason they offer you, and even spend money on advertising, to instill this idea in you, to convince you. Think about it, turn on critical thinking. I hope my videos will contribute to this. Thank you for your attention. Subscribe to this channel. And goodbye, until we meet again.